Hey guys, tonight we're wandering down a dirt path just before sunrise, where the grass is still heavy with dew and the mist hangs low, soft as linen. Over the rolling fields of a medieval village, you carry a woven basket slung over your shoulder, a hood pulled over your head not for warmth, but protection, from the buzzing, from the stings, from the thousands of tiny workers you're about to greet. The hives are hidden in a hedgerow long, low domes woven from wicker and plastered with a mixture of mud, dung, and moss. They're called skeps. You crouch beside them, your knees already damp, and pull your veil down. You breathe in that familiar scent, earthy, floral, a little sour. You know what's coming. One hive is humming louder than the rest. It's going to be a stingy morning. You are a medieval beekeeper, and you probably won't survive this. Not because of the bees though, let's be honest. You're definitely allergic, and no one knows what allergic means yet, but because you're a peasant. You live off watery pottage, and your main medical expert is someone called Old Maud with the elbow lump. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment telling me your location and the local time right now. I love seeing who's drifting off with me around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You move with practiced grace, lifting the dome lid of the skep just enough to peek inside. The bees barely notice. It's early enough, cool enough. They're sleepy too, clustered together in a golden swarm, legs tucked up like tiny monks at prayer. You don't use smoke that hasn't really caught on in your village yet. You rely on calm hands and slow movements, and maybe a quick prayer to St. Ambrose, the patron saint of beekeepers. He's often depicted with a halo of bees, which is slightly flattering, slightly horrifying. Honey is your main income, sure, but more than that, it's your identity. In a world where most peasants are stuck in endless cycles of sowing and harvesting, you've carved out a little niche, half herbalist, half alchemist. People come to you for candles, for remedies, even for charms. A dab of beeswax here, a whispered rhyme there. There's superstition baked into every jar, and the perks aren't bad. While others are gnawing on black bread and onion soup, you sometimes sneak a spoonful of honey, just enough to taste sunlight, just enough to feel like a king. But it's not all sweetness. Bees sting a lot, and often in unfortunate places. One beekeeper in 1386 was reportedly stung on the tongue after trying to taste honey too boldly. The village laughed for weeks. You've learned the signs when a hive is about to swarm, when the queen is unhappy, when rain is coming. Bees can sense it all. That's your excuse anyway, for why you're constantly predicting the weather. The bees are restless, you mumble, and somehow, that's more convincing than the local priest. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants truly understood bee biology or just made very good guesses. There are records of folk singing to bees to calm them, of training bees to follow flower pots by sending the air with mead, of believing bees could smell sin. Sin, yes. Your daily kit is simple: a veil made of linen and horsehair, gloves, stitched from pig's skin if you're lucky, and a little knife to scrape the comb. Your tools are handmade, passed down, maybe even slightly cursed. The basket you carry? You found it near a ruined cottage after a storm, and you still swear it hums louder than the others. A neighbor once asked if you talk to the bees. Of course you do. Everyone does. Not just because it's charming, but because you're supposed to. If someone in the household dies, you must inform the bees, or they'll abandon the hive. You lean in close and whisper the news into their tiny, fuzzy ears. Do they understand? You don't know, but you'd rather not risk it. In the village, you're respected, in the way that odd people often are. People nod politely when you pass, then mutter after you're gone. That one with the bees. But when their candle burns cleaner than ever, or their child's cough fades after a beeswax rub, they start to look at you differently. Maybe you're not just a beekeeper. Maybe you're something more. And while everyone else spends their days hoeing turnips and dragging firewood, you get to kneel in clover meadows, listening to a music no one else hears. That low, steady hum, a lullaby with wings. But of course, things aren't always peaceful. The bees can go rogue. A particularly aggressive hive once drove the blacksmith's dog into a pond. You remember watching it, a blur of fur and yelps, leaping in like it had just insulted the queen personally. You trudge back to your cottage after the morning's tending, arms sticky, mood light. The sun is climbing now, the mist burning off the fields. Inside, you set down your basket. You'll strain the honey later. Right now, you rest your hands on the table and listen. Outside, the buzz continues, soft and constant, like a heartbeat, like a promise. The day warms, and with it, the bees grow bolder. You hear them before you see them, tiny, Defiant drummers tapping the windows of your cottage. By late morning, you're back outside. Veil tugged over your face again, hands tucked into your sleeves like you're preparing for prayer or a slap from God. The sky's darkening. You glance upward. Storm clouds. Bees hate storms. You do too. Mostly because they send the bees into a spiral of confusion. Like when someone tries to organize a surprise feast in the middle of Lent. It never ends well. Still, you head back toward the skeps, keeping low to the ground, cloak snapping around your ankles like a cranky cat. Today's job, candle wax rendering, glamorous. You scoop old combs into a heavy clay pot and carry them toward the fire pit near the shed. The scent of wax is thick and comforting, clinging to your skin like a second layer. But as the first drops melt and shimmer into gold, your mind drifts not to the bees, but to the bells. The church bells. You hear them constantly, matins, lauds, prime, every few hours. The air splits with a gong loud enough to shake your teeth. The village priest says it keeps time with the angels. You say it keeps the bees nervous. Every toll makes them tremble, a twitch through the hives like they've just remembered a deadline. And it's not just the bells, it's the monks, too. You've done work for them, traded honey for ink, candles, or those little hard biscuits that crack teeth and taste like sin. In return, they've allowed you into their scriptorium once or twice, where gold leaf glitters on pages and beeswax seals every precious scroll. There's a theory floating around that the Book of Psalms was written under the influence of honey fumes. You like that idea? Explains all the lions and harp-plucking in monasteries. Bees are more than insects, they're metaphors. Chaste, orderly, industrious, like monks, but with wings. St. Bernard compared them to Jesus. St. John Chrysostom claimed they represented the perfect Christian life. Makes you wonder what those saints would say if they saw a bee drunkenly crash into your ear. And then there are the saints who didn't just write about bees. They had relationships with them. Take St. Madamic of Ireland. Legend says he loved his bees so much they followed him. When he left the monastery swarming after him like a buzzing, adoring congregation, some historians claim that's allegory. Others point out that medieval monks did, in fact, move hives with them when relocating. The truth is a bit of both, like most things. Historians still argue whether bees were considered holy on their own or just convenient symbols. Some say they were little preachers, others say they were just very sticky metaphors. You suspect it depends on whether the historian's been stung lately. But weather doesn't care about symbolism. Thunder rolls in, low and lazy. The air smells of ozone and old nettles. You wrap your cloak tighter, but the bees are already reacting. A few hives begin to hum louder, angrier. They sense the pressure shift like barometers with wings. You duck into your shelter just as fat drops begin to fall. Rain hammers the roof in uneven rhythms. The kind of storm that drowns seedlings and starts arguments. Inside, you light a beeswax candle, the good kind. Not the smoky tallow that peasants use. It burns clean and sweet, casting a golden glow across the room. Your walls are cluttered with wax figures, dried herbs, and little scraps of vellum scribbled with half-legible notes. You once wrote down the results of a bee experiment involving lavender, honey, and your sister's cat. You no longer speak of that day. Outside, the storm rages, but your candle stands firm. That's part of why beeswax was so prized. It didn't reek like animal fat, didn't sputter. Cathedrals fought over it, so did kings. Some places even had candle taxes. Imagine that, lighting a prayer, then paying for it twice. Your village has rules, too. Quiet ones. Don't take honey on Fridays. Don't harvest wax on holy days. Don't insult the bees aloud. These aren't written down, but everyone knows them. And in the middle of it all is you, part farmer, part mystic, part town oddity. You once made a charm for a girl who wanted her lover to stay faithful. It involved beeswax, rosemary, and a tiny braid of his hair. He ran off with the brewer's daughter a week later. But no one blamed you. They blamed the bees. Superstition threads through everything. You've heard tales of bees who refused to leave a dead man's chest, of hives that swarmed in perfect spirals before plague hit, of honey turning black after a betrayal. One monk claimed that if you looked closely enough into the wax, you could see faces. You tried that once after a particularly strong need. All you saw was your own reflection, slightly distorted, slightly sticky. As the rain slows, you poke your head outside. The bees are quiet again, huddled deep in their hives. You give them space. They'll emerge when ready. Like you, they hate being rushed. You walk the edge of your garden, nudging puddles with your boot. Bees aren't the only things you tend. There are herbs, too. Mugwort, thyme, borage, plants they like. Plants that heal, plants that smell like the past. And as the last clouds roll away, and the air clears, you know the work isn't over. There are combs to clean, jars to seal, candles to trim. But for now, you let the moments go. Let the hum return. Let the rhythm resume. Tomorrow, you'll answer to the bees again. Tonight, you listen. By morning, the storm has passed, and everything feels washed and new. The path to the hives glistens with worm trails and half-drowned beetles. The hedges glimmer with rain-kissed spider webs. You step around a sleepy toad, adjust your basket, and head back to the skeps. There's a smell in the air, faint, green, just a little sweet. It tells you the linden trees are blooming. And when the linden blooms, the bees go a little dramatic. They get drunk on the nectar, wobble mid-flight. Some even sleep inside the flowers. You once watched a bee tumble out of a blossom and lie motionless on a leaf, like it had just written a tragic poem. You grin, because you understand the mood. It's a foraging day. You're following your bees, not just literally, but figuratively. This morning, you'll walk to the edge of the forest where wild hives live in tree hollows. And later, you'll trade honey at market and hear stories of where it all ends up. Your honey doesn't stay put. It goes places, into monasteries, yes, into peasants' kitchens, but also into the hands of apothecaries, merchants, and once, famously, a knight who smeared it over his armor before battle. He claimed it made the sword slide off. You suspect it mostly made him very sticky and confusing to fight. You walk with a pot of honey nestled in a sling, wrapped in linen. It's the good kind spring blossom, pale gold, soft as butter. As you reach the crossroads near the market, you pass a merchant caravan. They're headed for the coast. One of them points to your basket and says, "That for trade." You nod. He offers a bolt of faded fabric in return. You don't need it, but you like the gesture. There's a kind of honor in bartering. One sticky jar for a length of someone else's story. In town, the market square is already humming. You find your usual place, beside the potter who smells like kiln smoke and blisters. His wife always gives you a crooked smile, probably because you once sold her a honey salve that made her baby stop screaming through the night. A monk passes by and buys a beeswax tablet for writing notes. You wonder if he'll compose sermons or doodle rude drawings of other monks. Could go either way. Honey here is currency and cure. It's mixed into cakes, medicines, even wine. You hear whispers of recipes involving rosewater and cinnamon from Moorish traders. Someone mentions a place called Cordoba, where the candles are carved into spirals and smell like orange blossoms. You've never left the county, but your bees have. Their work travels far across borders, over oceans, even into books. Historians still argue whether the honey trade influenced medieval diplomacy or simply sweetened it. Some say that royal courts demanded specific floral honeys from distant regions as tribute. Others insist that's romantic nonsense, concocted by later poets. You think it's both. The truth often tastes like honey, sweet, complicated, and a little sticky on the tongue. As the market winds down, you linger. A child tugs your sleeve and asks if bees can fall in love. You say yes, but only with flowers. She nods solemnly and skips off like you've just explained the universe. By evening, you're back on the road, pack lighter, purse heavier. You pass a healer's cottage and drop off a small jar. She'll turn it into a salve for burns. Last month, she used your wax to plug a cracked skull. You try not to think about that when you're eating toast. As you walk, you think about your bees again. About how far they fly, sometimes up to 5 miles from the hive in search of the perfect bloom. You imagine their little legs aching, their eyes darting from color to color, never quite satisfied. You think about the queen, the heart of the hive, larger than the others, doted on constantly. You've only glimpsed her a few times. She doesn't look particularly regal, more like a sleep-deprived ant with too many errands. But the others adore her, and that's what matters. You reach the edge of the woods, where wild hives live. You don't harvest here, not often. These are sacred. You watch one for a while, listening to the gentle buzz. It's deeper here, under the canopy, a sound layered with bird song and wind and the creak of ancient trees. There's a story the elders tell of bees carrying messages between lovers separated by war. They say if you whisper a name into a bee's wing, it'll fly to the one who needs to hear it. You don't believe it exactly, but you've tried. Once, just to see. You remember that day. It was raining, and the field smelled like violets. You held the bee gently, its wings quivering, and said the name, then you let it go. You never got a reply. But that night, a bee landed on your windowsill, curled up beside your candle, and stayed until dawn. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe bees understand more than we give them credit for. The sun sets slow and syrupy. You start your walk home, dusted with pollen, fingers sticky with someone else's future. Another day done. another jar gone, another secret shared between you and the bees. The moon is high now, and the air carries that faint, unmistakable buzz, fainter than daytime, but still there, like an invisible chorus just under the skin of the world. You sit outside your cottage, near the garden, a blanket around your shoulders, and a mug of warm cider at your side. And you're watching the hives, not for maintenance or harvest, but for something stranger. Tonight, you're listening. See, medieval beekeepers knew that bees spoke, not in words, obviously, but in dances, in vibrations, in the way they fanned their wings or jostled inside the hive. You've seen it, a bee returning from a journey, waggling its behind in tight figure eights. It's funny, even now, but it's also a map, a direction, a distance, all conveyed in this tiny, choreographed shimmy. You squint toward the hive closest to the rosemary bush. There's movement inside. You crawl closer, press your ear to the side of the skep. The bees are murmuring like monks reading scripture in the next room, warm, rhythmic, steady. You hum in response, a low tune your mother taught you when you were small, not a song really, more like a permission slip. You've always believed the bees recognize your voice. Historians still argue whether medieval beekeepers genuinely understood the waggled dance, or simply observed patterns by instinct. The written record is thin, but oral tradition, oh, that's thick as honey. Stories passed down of bees warning keepers of invaders, bees swarming before a birth, bees quieting just before a death. You once had a swarm move hives in the middle of the night. No known reason. Just vanished from one skep and reappeared in another 30 feet away, perfectly ordered, queen included. You called it a miracle. The village priest called it a distraction from scripture. Inside your cottage, you keep a journal, a modest one, beeswax sealed, bound in soft leather. In it are your observations, your conversations, as you call them. You've tried to translate the patterns. A short buzz followed by 3 wing taps might mean good blooms nearby. A furious flapping at dusk could be there's a mouse again. You're still not sure. You never will be. That's the charm. There's an old belief that bees carry souls, that each hive contains a whisper of the people who've passed nearby. You heard it first from a traveling weaver, who swore her grandfather's laughter came back to her in a hive near a battlefield. You believed her, and so you talked to them, not just when someone dies, like the tradition says, but when something's weighing on your mind, when the harvest is light, when the neighbors are being particularly annoying about your herbal smoke. Spells. You once told the bees about a dream where you flew, not with wings, just lifted off. No effort, no explanation. The next day, 3 hives produced combs shaped like spirals. You took that as encouragement. You pluck a sprig of lavender and crush it gently between your fingers. Bees love lavender. So do you. It makes the air feel rounder somehow, softer. You scatter the petals near the hives, then lean back, watching the moonlight filter through the orchard. There are voices in the night, sometimes real ones. Travelers passing by, other keepers checking their hives by moonlight. You once met an old woman who claimed she'd been married to a beekeeper for 40 years. He wasn't as clever as the bees, she said, but he was sweeter than the honey. You hope someone says something like that about you someday. One of the hives stirs a soft rustle, like turning pages in a library. You crawl closer, careful not to spook them. You don't wear your veil at night. You trust them more after dark. Or maybe you just feel braver when the world is quiet. You whisper, "Tell me something," and as if on cue, a single bee flies out slow, deliberate, glowing slightly in the moonlight like it's dipped in silver. It circles your head once, then lands on your sleeve. You don't move. It stays there a moment, as if considering its options. Then it lifts off again and disappears into the dark. That's enough of an answer. You head inside, not to sleep just yet, but to tend your candle molds. You pour the warm wax slowly, deliberately, watching it settle. You're making a gift tonight for the midwife in the next village. She helped bring a child into the world last week. The bees quieted just before the birth, and you like to think they knew. There's something sacred in these small moments. The way wax hardens, the way honey drips slow, the way 1,000 insects can move with a single thought. You've never seen a hive truly angry, not like stories say. You've seen them disturbed, defensive, protective, but furious. That's rare. Bees don't waste their rage. They sting once and die. A lesson in commitment. Sometimes, you wonder if people were once more like bees, living in quiet harmony, each with a role, humming through life, knowing when to fly and when to stay. You don't romanticize the past, not entirely, but you do admire their sense of purpose, their quiet loyalty, their dance. The candles cool. You trim the wicks, place them carefully in a basket, and blow out the lantern. Outside, The hives hum on. They always do. The next morning, something's wrong. You feel it before you see it, the strange stillness outside. The way the birds hesitate on their usual branches, the hush between wind gusts. You step out into the garden, basket in hand, and freeze halfway across the path. One of your hives is silent. Not quiet. Silent. No buzz. No movement at the entrance, just a strange, empty hush that seems to suck sound out of the air. Your stomach sinks. You kneel slowly. Press your ear against the side. Nothing. You lift the lid. Inside, the wax is intact. The combs remain. But the bees are gone. Not dead, gone. Vanish. Absconded. It happens. Not often, but it happens. If the queen feels threatened or sick, if the hive gets too hot, or if something just doesn't feel right, she leads her workers out. A mass exodus, a vote of no confidence. You stare at the empty skep. There's no real way to predict this. No manual to prevent it. Historians still argue whether absconding was more common in the Middle Ages due to poorly insulated hives, or if people just didn't recognize the signs. Either way, it feels personal. You sit back on your heels, thinking. You told them your secrets. You sang to them. You whispered to them during storms. And now, they're gone without a word. But you don't panic. Not yet. You do what beekeepers have always done in moments like this. You check the other hives. One is thriving, honey thick and golden. Bees coming and going like gossiping villagers. Another is quiet, but present. Recovering from the rain. You take inventory. You adjust your veil. You walk into the village. Because sometimes the bees don't disappear entirely. Sometimes they just relocate. And if they've stayed nearby, someone will have seen the cloud, a loud, rolling swarm like thunder with wings. Sure enough, an old man sitting outside the blacksmith's points with his walking stick. They were up near the chapel yesterday, he says. Looked like a wedding. You nod, thank him, and head uphill. And there they are, in the low branches of a hawthorn tree. You spot the mass. Bees thick and slow, clumped around the queen, a pulsing, living orb. They're resting, pausing mid-journey, while scout bees search for a new home. You hold your breath. This is delicate. Too sudden a move, and they'll scatter. Too slow, and they'll leave before you can act. You fetch your swarm basket wide, open, smeared with balm to attract them. You climb the tree slowly, settle the basket just beneath the branch, then gently shake. The mass drops. Not all at once, but in a golden spill like living honey. They fall into the basket and begin to settle. You cover it with linen, secure it with twine. Your heart is racing. The villagers watch from a distance, impressed and slightly unnerved. Someone claps. You pretend not to notice. By afternoon, the bees are back in a new skep. Closer to the rosemary bush, you've whispered your apologies. Left them lavender. It's all you can do. You sit down beside the new hive and exhale. Later that week, a traveling scholar visits the village. He's odd, barefoot, with ink stains on his nose, but kind. He's collecting stories about animals put on trial. You tell him, half joking, about a tale from decades ago. A hive attacked a man after he smashed the skep in anger. The village elders gathered, and someone, probably after too much cider, insisted the bees be tried for assault. A little table was set up. A priest read charges. A child translated them to be language which mostly involved humming. The bees, of course, didn't show. The case was dismissed for lack of attendance. The scholar laughs, scribbles in his notes. He says, "That's the best thing I've heard in 3 villages." You tell him to check the hollow tree in the woods. There's a wild hive there that buzzes louder during thunderstorms. He nods like you've given him a treasure map. He leaves behind a scroll of illustrations, bees drawn in ink, mid-dance, wings sharp and delicate. You tack it above your workbench. Because even now, in your quiet corner of the world, the bees are still teaching you. They teach you patience. They teach you order. They teach you when to stay and when to fly. You watch the new hive settle, wings rising and falling in rhythm. You swear they hum slightly differently now, like they've returned with new songs or new stories. Maybe from the chapel, maybe from somewhere farther. You lean back, legs stretched in front of you, hands behind your head. The garden buzzes with life. You've still got candles to pour, honey to strain, a charm to make for the woman whose cow won't stop sneezing. But not now. Now you rest. Now you listen. Now you let the bees keep watch. Asterisk, 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 the night comes slowly, wrapping your cottage in quiet shadows and soft breezes. The trees rustle gently, the garden settling under the glow of the moon. Even the bees, ever watchful, have curled into their combs, tiny, dreaming bundles of fur and wing. You sit by the window, a candle flickering beside you, its golden light mirrored faintly in the waxy sheen of the hives. Outside, everything smells faintly of lavender, wood smoke, and honey. The kind of scent that makes you want to close your eyes and drift. Gently. You sip something warm. Let it coat your tongue. Let it slow your thoughts. All around you is rhythm, the steady beat of wings, of breath, of stories handed down in low whispers and sweet jars. There's no rush. No need to move quickly. Here, things unfold in their own time. Like a flower waiting for sun. Like honey, finding its shape. And as you tuck yourself in, as you pull the blanket close and let your head rest easy, you hear them one last time. The bees, humming softly, not loud, not urgent, just enough to remind you they're near. Tending their queen, tending their world, tending yours. You let your eyes close. You breathe out, slowly. And you sleep, wrapped in gold.